Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Eruvin Daf Chafav, on Chafayim base, 4 lines from the bottom. It says in Gemara, Ab Varnica, there was this large shady tree, which Rashi describes as something they would sit underneath during the summertime for picnicking. Dehavale l'reish galusa bevustane. So this belonged to the Reish Galus, the head of the Galus, and he had it in his bustan, in his orchard, in his garden. And this area was an area which was enclosed shaloi l'shem dira. It was loihukaf l'dira, not for residential purposes, and it was an area greater than 2 sa, so we cannot carry in this large size enclosure. Amalei l'Rav Huna bar Chinana. So Reish Galusa asked Rav Huna bar Chinana, try to do something to allow them to use it tomorrow on Shabbos. Li'avid mar takanta. So mar meaning Rav Huna, he should please make some sort of modification, a takana, the lemachar nechol namahosam, which would allow us to eat our bread there tomorrow on Shabbos. Somehow turn this area into a residential area to allow us to carry there. Azal, so Rav Huna bar Chinna went of the kana, pachas mishloisha. He went ahead and he inserted poles upright next to each other, with leaving a space of less than 3 between each pole, creating some sort of small enclosure there where they would store the food, where the watchman would sit and wait. And this would be considered a makom dira, an area of dwelling, in which case the entire enclosure would now turn into a makom shehukaf l'dira. Let's see Rashi inside, 3 lines from the bottom. Avad kana pachas mishlosha tfachim. Hekef, this enclosure, kigoyin mechitzas kanem dalad mechitzas. So he created these 4 mechitzas using these sticks, kecheder, like a room, lahaniach sham balayla hamachal, to store the food there at night, v'lodur shama shemer, to have the watchman, the guard, stay overnight, ulamachar, itatelena b'chala pardes. Tomorrow they're able to carry the food throughout the entire orchard, this entire garden. Why? Because it turned into a residential area. The isbei shemeir beis dira, because it has a watchman, it has a dwelling area, and now it has a din of a makom shehukaf l'dira, and therefore, despite its large size, you can carry throughout this enclosure. So this was Rav Huna bar Chinana's approach. He made this makom dira and allowed carrying throughout this enclosure. Now the problem here is that what came first? Did the dira come before the enclosure, or vice versa? We learned in Daf Chavdal, first the dira needs to be present, and only then comes the mechitzas and enclose that makom dira. It's the only way to do it right. It says the Gemara, Azal Rava Shalfinu. So Rava went and he pulled out the sticks. He disapproved of Rav Huna bar Chinna's approach. It's invalid because the dira came first. Because the hekef came first. First came the mechitzas around this orchard, and then the dira afterwards. The mechitzas here don't relate to the dira. Azal Rav Papa, Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua. So they came along, Naktinu. They went over there and they pulled away the sticks and they actually put it away. Naktinu mi basrei. They went over and they put it away. So that nobody should go ahead and reinstate them. They actually supported. They held of Rava's approach. This is an invalid hekef l'dira. It says in Lamachar, the following day, Eisvei Ravina l'Rav. Ravina brought a raya in support of Rava, meaning this is not considered to be a proper residential enclosure. He brought a raya to Rava from a brisa, where we learn that first needs to come the dwelling, and then the mechitzas which come to enclose that dwelling. Otherwise, the mechitzas don't relate to the dwelling. This is a brisa pertaining to Hilchos Tchumen. We know one can walk up to 2,000 amma from his place of residence, or if he's sitting in a walled city, a properly walled city, from the wall itself. That's when we begin counting 2,000 amma, because anything within that walled city is considered to be like one residential area, and the tchum only begins outside the city. Says the brisa, depends what type of city. Ir chadasha, a newly established city, moedin lamishivasa. We count the tchum of 2,000 amas from where? From its establishment, meaning from the houses themselves, not from the wall surrounding the city. As the Gemara will tell us soon, because the wall came before the houses. Therefore, the wall doesn't relate to the homes, doesn't create this singular residential entity, and we have to count the tchum from an actual house. V'yishana, but an older city, which the Gemara soon will tell us means that the homes were established prior to the wall. So here the wall is coming to complement, to surround the homes, and it relates to the homes. It unifies them, it bonds them together, it creates a residential entity within that walled city. In which case we are meant to be moided to count the tchum michay masa from the wall. Ezi chadasha, what is considered to be a chadasha, a recently established city. Vezi shana, what is considered to be an older city. Chadasha means shehukfa u'sayv yashva. First, it was enclosed, surrounded with a chayma, and only afterwards was it inhabited did they build the homes. In which case, the wall here doesn't relate properly to those homes, and you begin counting the tchum from the actual home. Yishana, what is considered to be an area Yishana, where we count from the chayma itself. First it was established with homes, and afterwards they encircled it with the chayma. In which case the chayma here relates to the homes, and everything within that chayma is considered to be like one entity. And the city only ends at that wall. You begin counting, measuring, calculating the tchum from the chayma. Says Ravina to Rava, I will prove to you from this brisa your approach was correct, because this modification that Rav Huna bar Chinna did was invalid. Why? V'hai nami, in this case as well, kuhukva ulebasayv yashvadami. It's like the halacha first. Something was encircled, and only then was it established, was it inhabited. Just as we find when it comes to the tchum, when the chayma was erected first, and then the homes come after. You must count from the homes. You don't reckon with that chayma. That wall doesn't relate to the homes, because it came prior to the building of the homes. In this case as well, the enclosure around this garden preceded the establishment of the little enclosure there with the sticks. So the hekef came before the dira, before the yisha. In this case, the hekef, the enclosure, the mechitzas encircling this area, don't make a mokem hukef l'dira, because there was no dira when those mechitzas were constructed. Let's see Rashi inside. Only on the top of the Amid Shalfinu. So Rav Huna bar Chinna established those kanim as a mechitza, and Rava came along, Shalfinu, he pulled them out. He doesn't agree with this modification. Naktinu mi basrei. So Rav Papa, Rav Huna Risho came and they actually took away the sticks after Rav Papa pulled them out. Shlo yachzer Rav Huna v'yitaknim, to ensure Rav Huna doesn't come back and reestablishes those sticks, because they held like Rava. They agreed with him. And the following day, Ravina brought a raya to Rava from a brisa. Eisvei l'siyuye de shaper of it, that Rava acted correctly in pulling out those sticks. We have the Mishnah, the brisa, which says Ir Chadash, a newly established city. Moedin lo mishivasa. You measure from the homes. It says Rashi mukefas chayma, if it was surrounded with a wall, ve'einam yisheves kula, and we're speaking that not the entire enclosure or the entire interior space of this wall was filled with homes. There are some empty spaces there. So the question is, where you count from? Do you count the tchum? Do you calculate 2,000 amma from the home, or can you go to the wall and begin from there? You cannot count from the chayma, from the homes. The chayma here is not an effective wall. Consider the entire enclosure, the entire city, as though it's merely 4 amis, which is a term used to denote a single entity of residence. So in this case, we don't have that quality, and therefore we must begin calculating from the actual home. Since it's yeshiva, means the inhabitants are recent, because the wall preceded the homes. Aval Yishana, but a previously established city. Shishuba Yishana, in which case the residents preceded the wall. V'kadam l'chaymasa. In that case, moedin lo michamasa. We begin calculating from the chayma itself, because in this case the wall is coming to bind together all the homes, coming to create that singular walled city entity. In which case the entire enclosure is considered like merely 4 amis, meaning it's all like one residence. We begin counting from the end of the residence, which is the wall. And the Gemara continued, V'hai nami, in this case as well. Hai pardes, this orchard, this garden, Hai rehukaf yamim rabim, was already encircled for many days. V'hacha shemira nasa achshav, and this watchman house was recently constructed. V'hekev apardes lavadata dach dirahu hava. This hekef, this mechitza surrounding the pardes was not done with the intent and purpose to serve a residency. V'dami ki hukav v'sof yashav, it is similar to the halacha of the city which was first walled and only afterwards inhabited. So this was Ravina bringing a right to Rava. You're 100% right. This was not a proper residential enclosure, and you did well. You did right that you pulled out those sticks. Continues the Gemara. Amalei Rav Papa Rava. Rav Papa as well will bring a right to Rava that this is not a proper hookup ladira. V'amar Ravasi. Didn't Ravasi say mechitzas adrachlan? Mechitzas which were created by construction workers, by builders, meant for shade. Those are merely temporary mechitzas, lo yishma mechitza. In the Rabbanan, we don't consider them to be proper mechitzas. You cannot carry within mechitzas of this sort, because they're merely temporary mechitzas. They don't have a long shelf life. Actually, says they're there for a day and night. Therefore, it's or maybe longer, but it's not something which is meant to stay there permanently. And in our case as well, these sticks were not meant to be there long term. Alma apparently kivan de, since those mechitzas for the construction workers are merely done for protection and privacy. Kivan lo yahav your mechitza, they're not regarded as a steadfast proper mechitza. Hachinami here as well, when it comes to these sticks, which are merely of a temporary nature. Rashi says they'll be there for day and night, just for overnight, 24 hours. It's just something temporary. Hachinami kivan avida. It's not merely for privacy, meaning it's just something temporary. There's no intention of leaving it there long term. It is not considered to be midarbanan as a proper mechitza. Therefore, these sticks, which are enclosing this area where you're going to store the food, leave the watchman overnight, you can't reckon with them. They can't create a residence, in which case the entire hekek should turn into a makom which is hukaf l'dir. You can't say that. Let's take a look at Rashi, 12 lines from the top. It says Rashi, Omer Rav Papa l'Rav. Listen, Rav Papa as well was bringing a right to Rava. This is not a proper mechitza, proper residence. Adrachlan banoim builders shoisim mechitza l'tzel s'v'yaseyim, which make this mechitza merely to shade themselves kshaboinim b'chama when they build in the sun. Kivan l'sniyusahi u'lamachar sasrila lav klumi. Since tomorrow they're going to break it down, it's merely there for shade, privacy. It's a temporary mechitza. It's not considered, not reckoned with. V'hanami, in our case as well, l'sniyusa d'yom v'layla ba'almi. Davida. It was merely erected for tznius day or night, meaning just a very short shelf life, a very short experience of a mechitza v'lavdirhi. Therefore, it cannot be considered to be a proper mechitza and a proper dira, and this enclosure cannot be transformed into a makom which was hukaf l'dir. Continues over to another raya. Amar le Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yishua l'Rava. I'll also bring you a raya. Va'amar Rav Huna, did Rav Huna say, mechitza asui l'nachas, lo yishma mechitza. A mechitza which was merely erected for the sake of containment, to contain something within it. That's not considered to be a proper mechitza. Midrabanan, you cannot rely on it, you cannot carry within an enclosure that was merely done for storage, for containment purposes, to safeguard food, etc. As we find in the following story, the Rabba Baravua, Ma'arav lo lekula mechuza, arsiyais. So what happened was Mechuzah was a large city, and there were many alleyways, many muvois, which were stretching from, let's say, from the middle of the city out to the outskirts of the city, to the perimeter of the city. Now, those mavois were not actually mefulish. They were not open on both sides, because at the outskirts of the city, there were mechitzas enclosing the entranceway to that mavoi. So technically, this city, this mechuza right now, should be considered a completely walled city. It's like one entity, in which case you can go ahead and carry throughout the city, provided you establish an eruv chatzeros to merge together all the residents of the city. Consider them like one residency, like one dira. Now you can carry throughout the entire area of Rabban. Nevertheless, we found that Rabba Baravua didn't do that. He didn't make one area for the entire city and relied on those mechitzas. Again, those mechitzas were at the entranceway to the city. those alleyways which ended at the perimeter, at the outskirts of the city, all had a mechitza at that point. He didn't rely on those mechitzas. You know why? Because those mechitzas were there to protect their content. What type of content? There were these pits, which were dispersed throughout the city here, and they had animal feed in them. They had date pits, meant for oxen. So the mechitzas, which were created at the entranceway to the city, at the entranceway to those alleyways, were intended to protect the contents of those pits. Therefore, he didn't rely on them. Let's see inside. He would make an eruv for the entire mechuzah, not one singular eruv for the entire city, to rely on those mechitzas. Neighborhoods, meaning he would make a separate eruv chatzeros for each neighborhood. Why? Because he didn't regard the entire city as one entity due to those mechitzas. Because those mechitzas were there to protect the content of the pits which were contained in the city. Mishum Pira, on account of the pits, the Beituri, meant for the oxen, which contained date pits. So we see, Va'apira de Beituri, mechitzas which were constructed for this purpose, to protect the content of these pits. Kemechitza sui lenachas damya. It's like a mechitza which is merely erected lenachas, to protect the content. So we see that a mechitza merely to contain, to protect a content, is not considered to be a proper residential mechitza. Here as well, says Rav Huna Beit Yeshua, in the case of the Reish Galusa, so Rav Huna Bar China created those temporary sticks to put the food in, to keep the shemer in. The Gemara is comparing it to a mechitza merely meant for containment. Rashi explains, it means to say that it's not meant for residential purposes. Just as in the mechitza, it's meant for containment, it's not meant for dira. It's meant to contain, to store. Likewise, in our case, even though the shemer is living there, but it's just a temporary mechitza. It's not meant for dira, for constant dwelling, for residency, for proper dira. Therefore, those mechitzas don't create dira. So this was a third approach in support of Rava, and he did well when he pulled out those sticks, because that wasn't a valid dira. So in summary, we have three rayas to Rava. Number one, from the Brisa, which told us that when the enclosure comes before the dwelling, when the hekev comes before the dira, it is not considered to be a proper hekev ladira. Next raya was from the chitzas adrach, and those construction mechitzas erected by the construction workers for the sake of protection from sun, something merely temporary, does not have midrabana din of mechitza. And finally, from the case of the pira de beituri, the mechitzas that were meant to protect the content of those pits which contain date pits. So those containment mechitzas not considered to be residential, of residential quality. Likewise, in our case, merely temporary mechitzas, these sticks, don't have residential quality and cannot be used. So the Reish Galusa, he saw what was going on. They pulled out the sticks, and they all brought rayas that it's invalid. Kari alayu, so in exasperation, he called out, he related to all these chachamim who brought rayas to invalidate this mechitza. Kari alayu Reish Galusa, he called out the pasuk which is in Yirmiyah. Chachamim heim alohara, ulahitav lo yado. That chachamim to do bad, they apply their wisdom to invalidate my mechitzas. They don't know how to do good, meaning because they invalidated his mechitzas. Continues the Gemara, Omar Biloy, Shematu Rabbi Lezer afilu beiskur. So Rabbi Lezer is telling us, or Biloy is telling us in the name of Rabbi Lezer, that even a karfif which was not hukah fladira can be very large in size, up until a beiskur which is 30 sa. That's also considered to be small enough, relatively small enough, to have some sort of residential value to it. And therefore you can carry in it, even if it's up to 30 sa. So this is much larger than the standard formula which the Chacham set forth, which is 2 sa. He holds up until 30 sa, which is the beiskur. Masnisin like Chananya. Our Mishnah here is not following Chananya, who gives us an even greater size allowance. The Sani Chananya Omer va'afilu yarboim sa, up to 40 sa, ke'as terat yeshamelech, like the walking area of the kings of the palace. They had a backyard where they would stroll and perhaps have paths there. So that also has residential value. Rashi says, Alma, Ikadira Bahachi. Apparently, this too is considered to be a Malkam Dira, a residentially used area. Therefore, he says that you can go ahead and stretch your karfif up until 40 sa and carry within it. So we have Rabbi Lo gives us a shita of 30 sa, which is a base kur, and Chananya goes a bit further to 40 sa. Rabbi Yehuda Kessler. Both opinions are based on the same pasuk, which is a source of their respective shitas. Shneimar, this was by the palace of Chizkiah Melech. Vayi Yishayo lo yotza chatzer hatichoina. Now, Yishayo didn't go out to the chatzer hatichoina interior, didn't go out of the interior chatzer. Interesting, in the pasuk itself, you look in the Nevi'im, pasuk of Malachim, ksiv ha'ir. Instead of the word chatzer, it says lo yotza ha'ir. V'karin chatzer. And instead of reading ha'ir, we read chatzer. The pasuk is coming to teach us something. Even though this area was so large in size, this was a backyard, it was so large in size, like a typical city, like an average sized city, it is still considered and regarded as a chatzer, as a courtyard, which means that it has residential value and usage to it. Mekan las terat Yishamelech. Here we see this lot, this walking area, this strolling area of the king. Shoy kayoris beinoinios were built same size as a average, a medium-sized city, and it still retains residential quality to it. But so what is the point of machlokes between Chananya and Rabbi Loi? They're both basing it on this pasuk. Depends how large this place was. Marasava ayoras beinoinios. The medium-sized city was Havian Beis Kur, was a Beis Kur, which is 30 sa, and therefore we allow even an enclosure up to Beis Kur. Umar Savamem Sa Havian. Yours Beinoini is your typical city. Your average city is up to 40 sa. And the pasuk here tells us an area enclosed that has this area size of 30 or 40 sa is still considered to be a chatzer, a courtyard, has residential value, since we find that the king would stroll in there. So likewise, we apply a formula to any enclosure, even if it was not hukav l'dira. It is still considered to be a reasonably sized area which can have residential value to it. Says the Gemara, "V'Yishayo my boy Hassam." What was Yishayo doing there in the backyard of the palace, which wasn't the entrance point of the palace? Amar Rabbi Barachana of Yehuda Malamit. This teaches us Shechala Chizkiah fell ill. V'halach Yishayo v'hoishiv yeshiva al Pischai. Yishayo went over there and established the yeshiva al Pischai, at the entranceway to the palace, perhaps the back entranceway. And the point here was to protect Chizkiah from the Malach HaMavis. We know Torah protects one from the Malach HaMavis. As Mashal points out, perhaps he specifically chose the back, which is not an inhabited area where the Malach HaMavis perhaps can go ahead and sneak in, so to speak, because he's not allowed to be where the public is walking around, but in the backyard, that's where he has access. So specifically there, he chose to place the yeshiva to protect the king. We learn from here that when a Talmud Chacham falls ill, who meant to place a yeshiva at the entranceway to his home to protect him from the Malach HaMavis. Says Milsi, actually, we're not meant to do that. Why? It might endanger him further. Dilma, asi legaruye be Satan. Perhaps the Satan who galvanizes his powers, he'll feel threatened by the yeshiva and he'll redouble his effort to bring about harm on the Talmud Chacham. Now, Ashar points out that it appears that this conclusion only applies to your typical situation of a Talmud Chacham. But Yishayo did correctly, because there was already a gzera that Chizkiah should die. So he was coming to somehow undo the gzera, so to speak, to bring additional schusim to Chizkiah. It's not your typical case where a Talmud Chacham is ill. We're not meant to instigate the Yetzer Hara and bring about perhaps an even worse situation. Continues the Gemara, V'chein shemati imenu. So this is Rabbi Loi speaking. In addition, I also heard from Rabbi Lezer the following halacha: Anshe chatzer, sheshachar echad mem le'irev. You have people living in a chatzer, meant to make erev chatzeris amongst themselves. One of these residents forgot, neglected to make the erev. So what's the next option? You do bittul. Bittul literally means nullify. Here it means that you're giving up, you're surrendering, you're forfeiting your rights to use the chatzar. your usage rights, you're giving up and allowing them to acquire it. So this is in lieu of an Eruv. Now they can go ahead and use the entire chutzner as though he doesn't exist, because he's like a guest. He doesn't really have rights any longer in the chutzner. The fact that the rest of the residents made an Eruv and merged their ownership together, they created this one dira. Now they can freely transfer from their homes to the chutzner. And this fellow as well is considered like their guests, and he can go ahead and transfer from their homes to the chutzner. But there's one thing we have to keep in mind: this fellow cannot transfer from his home to the courtyard, because once he did bittul, if he can go ahead and transfer from his home to the courtyard, it's going to appear like he's regaining his foothold. He's reacquiring, he's taking back his usage rights to that chutzner. So he cannot transfer from his home to the chutzner. But they perhaps can use his home and the chutzner, meaning transfer from the home to the chutzner. Now, the Mishnah, according to Rabbi Eloi, in the name of Rabbi Lezer, tells us that he can go ahead and use the chutzner, transfer from their homes to the chutzner, and they can go ahead and transfer from his home to the chutzner as well. So that's Rabbi Eloi's version. But haven't we learned that his house is off limits even to them? Not only can he not transfer in and out of his home, but even the rest of the residents cannot go ahead and transfer in and out of this person's home. So you have a stira between our Mishnah and the other Mishnah. Amar Rav Huna bar Yeshua, Amar Rav Sheshes, like kasha. The teretz is very simple. The two Mishnahs reflect different shittas. Ha Rabbi Lezer. Our Mishnah is Rabbi Lezer. It's Rabbi Eloi in the name of Rabbi Lezer, who holds that when this person who neglected to make an Eruv does bittul, he forfeits his rights of usage in the chutzner. He's not limiting the bittul to chutzner. He'll do it generously. He'll give up even the rights of his home, so to speak, to the rest of the bnei chutzner. So now they can go ahead and freely transfer from his home to the chutzner as well. There's no concern here, because it all belongs to them. They have usage rights to everything, to the entire chutzner and to his home as well. That's Rabbi Lezer's shita. Therefore, in our Mishnah we learn that when he does bittul, they can go ahead and transfer from his home to the chutzner as well. So although for him himself, his home is off limits, meaning he can't transfer from his home to the chutzner, as we explained, because it'll look like he's going to regain his ownership of the chutzner. But they can go ahead and use everything freely, transfer from all their homes to the chutzner and vice versa, without any restrictions. That's Rabbi Lezer's shita, because he holds when you give away your chutzner, you give away your house as well. V'harabanan. In contrast to that Mishnah, which is following Shittas Rabbanan, which hold that when one forfeits his usage rights to the chutzner, he only gave away the rights to the chutzner. He never meant to give away the rights of usage of his home. Therefore, they cannot transfer from his home to the chutzner. So his home remains off limits for him and for them, meaning nobody could transfer from the home to the chutzner and vice versa. So if you go ahead and analyze it, you're going to conclude that the reason for these two shittas is as follows. When one does bittul on the rishus, the rights of use of his chatzar, he gives it away to the rest of the residents. Rishus beise bittul. Not only does he give away the rishus of the chatzar, he also gives away the rishus of the house. Therefore, they can freely transfer in and out of his home as well. This is Rabbi Lezer's shita, who holds that when a person is mevatel, Rashi says he's mevatel ba'ayin yafeh, with a good eye, generously gives away everything. The Rabbanan, however, they hold ha'mevatel rishus chatzerei. Just because he gave away the rishus of his chatzar, rishus beisei bittul, he never intended to give away the rishus of his home. Therefore, nobody could transfer from his home to the chatzar, because his home remains personally his. It's limited to him, and therefore it can't connect to this eruv chatzeros which they had established amongst themselves. His house remains off limits for everybody. Says on pshita. Well, that's pretty obvious. Meaning, why does Rav Sheshes need to go ahead and give us this lengthy explanation? Rabbi Lezer holds that he gives everything away. Rabbanan disagree with that. Isn't that pretty obvious? What then would be the basis of that machlekes? This certainly is the most obvious explanation why Rabbi Lezer holds when a person is mevatel the reshus to his fellow chatzar members, or you allow them to transfer in and out of his house because he gave away the house as well. Does Rabban disagree with that? Isn't that pretty obvious? That must be the reason. Why does Sheshas need to give us this lengthy explanation? Says the Gemara, Omar Rachava, Ano, myself, Rav Huna bar Chinna, myself and Rav Huna bar Chinna Targimna, we explained that apparently Rav Sheshas added this elaborate explanation. What he meant to say was that, he meant to indicate that the same reasoning will apply to another scenario as well. Meaning that because Rabbi Lezer indeed holds that a person gives away ba'ayin yofe, gives it generously, there'll be another ramification to this halacha as well. Apparently, this added explanation was needed to teach us the following halacha. You have 5 people residing in one courtyard, and one of them neglected to make an eruv. According to Rabbi Lezer, holds, generally speaking, when a person does bittul, how does he do it? He does it generously. So he gives away the chutzah and the home. In this case, we'll have another application. When this fellow forgot, we'll go ahead and make bittul. There's no need for him to go around to each person individually say, I'm being vatal to you, and to you, and to you. The assumption here is that his bittul was meant to give it to everybody. He's a generous fellow. He doesn't have to go specify to each person individually. So the bittul is assumed to be to all equally, and therefore there's no need to elaborate further. And this is Rabbi Lezer's shita that holds that bittul is done generously. L'Rabbanan, however, he needs to go ahead and approach them one by one and tell them, look, I'm doing bittul to you, and then to you, and then to you. Because there's no presumption here that he's doing it generously and has them all in mind. So this was the purpose of Rav Sheshas adding that clause to explain to us. Rabbi Lezer holds there's a generous attitude here, and Rabbanan disagree with that. Rav Sheshas meant to apply it to this context as well. Come on, Ozla, the Sanya. So Allah found in the following brisa, whose view does it reflect? The brisa says, Chamisha sheshurim b'chatzor echad, 5 who are residing in one chatzor, v'shachach echad mem, v'lo irev, and one of them forgot to make an erev. When he does bittul, he forfeits his ownership, his usage of the chatzor. There's no need to approach each person individually. Kiman, whose sheet is this? Rabbi Lezer, who holds that bittul is done generously, and the assumption is he had all of them happily in mind. Let's take a look at Rashi, 8 lines from the top. Says Rashi, apparently this added explanation was needed for the following halacha. Dashmin Rav Sheshas. Rav Sheshas here is coming to teach us something. Pay attention. To understand, to analyze the reasons behind the disagreement of Rav Lezer and Rabban. To learn from that, how to apply it to another halacha. The Rabbi Lezer, mevatel ba'ayin yofe mevatel. When a person is mevatel, he does it so generously. But we don't say chatzah de goli goli. The bittul of the chatzah, which he explicitly said, Megala, that he wants to do that, we say only that is what he had in mind. Ba'is like goli with the house. He didn't have that in mind. We don't say that. V'neilef mina, and therefore we learn from there the fact that we don't say that. We say that rather a person is generous with his bittul, and he gives away his home with the chatzah. Therefore, we can derive from there v'neilef mina the echad the batel lechad minayu batel leku. When he approaches one fellow of the chatzah, says, "Look, I'm giving away my batel to you, my chatzah." He didn't mean specifically to him. He meant to everybody equally. But we don't say leman de goli goli to the person that he explicitly spoke to. It works to leman like goli, but to other people not. So this realizes shita. Whoa, that person is generous with his bittul, and just as he's mevatel the home with his chatzar, likewise in this case he had everybody happily in mind. In contrast to Rabbanan, who disagree, they hold the person is limited with his bittul. He gives away only what he's compelled to. Rabbanan in this case will hold he needs to go over to each person and say, look, I'm giving it to you, and to that person I'm giving it to you as well. Just as we find the Gabi bias when it comes to the bittul of the usage of the home, it's very they hold they might like parish like battle. Unless he specifically, since he didn't specifically state that he's giving away the home, that's not including the bittul. In this case as well, to the person who had not yet specifically stated that he's giving him the reshus, the bittul does not apply to him. The kul nasur, and therefore everybody will be also, because Rashi gives a whole explanation based on the Gemara later that the bittul needs to apply to all them equally. Okay, let's get back to the Gemara. So this was the first approach in the Gemara. We had Rabbi Lezer and the Rabbanan. Rabbi Lezer holds Ein Yafa, generous bittul, the house with the chutzner. He has everybody in mind. Rabbanan hold limited bittul, the chutzner without the home, and only if he specifically approaches the person and gives him the bittul. Rav Kahana Masni Hachi. Rav Kahana had this previously stated version, that Rav Sheshes was the one who gave that explanation, but didn't really elaborate how to apply it. And it was Rechava and Rav Huna bar Chinana who provided us the context of that application. Rav Tavyumi Masni Hachi, he had a different version of events, same halacha, same result, but the difference will be that Rav Sheshes himself actually provided the context and the application of the halacha. Kiman Ozlam, says the Gemara, the following brisa. Who is it following? The brisa which says, Hadasani, hey sheshruim b'chatzer echad. You have 5 people in a single chatzer. V'shachach echad mavla irev, and one I forgot to make an erev. When he does bittul, he surrenders his rights of usage in the chatzer. There's no need for him to go ahead and do specific bittul for each specific person in this chatzer. Keman nuhushita is being reflected in this price. So Amar Funa, Par Yehuda, Amar Rav Sheshes. So it was Rav Sheshes himself who gave us this insight. Keman Rabbi Lezer. Apparently, this is found in Rabbi Lezer, who holds that a person is generous with his bittul. Therefore, it has this application as well, that the bittul will apply to all members. Equally, he had all of them in mind. There's no need for him to explicitly approach each specific person and give him the bittul. Amar Rav Papa Abai. Rav Papa asked Abai the following question. Now, up until now, we had this, with this clarity of understanding, this clarity of pshat, in Rabbi Lezer's shita, which was that the bittul is done generously, and the Rabbanan hold, it's not necessarily so. Rav Papa evidently was not aware of this explanation, and therefore he presented the following question to Abai. Rav Papa Abai, the Rabbi Lezer, according to Rabbi Lezer, who holds that the bittul will apply to a person's home as well, and therefore, as we said, the other members of the chaser can go ahead and transfer in and out of his home because he gave away the rights to the other members. Says Rav Papa Abai, the Rabbi Lezer, according to Rabbi Lezer's shita, Amar Lo Matilna. Let's say he specifically says, you know what, I am not being mevatel my home. I'm not surrendering usage rights to my home. What's going to be the halacha there? And conversely, Ula Rabbanan, who say, generally speaking, the house is not included in the chatzer's bittul. He only gives away the chatzer. He has no intent to give away the home, therefore they cannot freely use his home. What about if he specifically says, Rabbanan, I am being mevatel my home as well? This is not a presumption, it's not stumma. He's specifically expressing his intention. What will be the halach in this case? Explains the Gemara. Time of the Rabbi Lezer is the basis of Rabbi Lezer's opinion, who holds that when he's mevatel the courtyard, he's surrendering the home as well. Is it because mishum de kasavar hamavatel rishus chatzerei? Every time a person does bittul on the usage rights of his chatzar, rishus basic bittul, do we simply understand that we presume that included in the rishus of the bittul of the rishus of the chatzar is also included the usage rights to his home? So the presumption here is that he is a generous fellow. He means to have everything included, the house as well as the chatzar. But in this case, he specifically said that's not his kavanah. V'hai Amar, Anola Matilna. This fellow specifically said, he said beferish, I am not being mevatel my home. So it's based on an assumption. When he specifically says that he wants to leave the home for himself, that can't be included. That's one approach. A dilma perhaps. Tama de Rabbi Lezer. What is the reason why Rabbi Lezer holds that, generally speaking, when one forfeits his usage rights to the chatzar, the usage rights to the home are included in that bittul as well? What is the reason? Mishum, because the bayis below chatzar, Lo ya'avidi inshi dedari. Because in a home, without usage rights to the courtyard, which is in front of the home, which is meant as a service area for the home, doesn't have rights to that. Lo ya'avidi inshi dedari. People don't live in this type of home. It's not considered to be a proper dwelling. So it's a halacha consideration, meaning once you give away the chutzner, included in that is the home as well. There's no dira, there's no dwelling, no residency remaining. Once you give away the usage rights of the chutzner, the house merely goes along with it. There's no home without the chutzner. Therefore, even in this case, even if he specifically says, you know what, I'm giving away the chutzner, but I'm keeping the home, he has no right to say that. Even if he says, you know what, I'm living in this home and retaining full ownership and usage rights to this home, lav klum kama, he hasn't said anything. Legally, halachically speaking, we don't reckon with those words. Because once you give away the chutzner, the house automatically goes along with it. It's not a standalone residence. It needs to go together with the chutzner. If there's no chutzner, there's no home. Therefore, when you do bittul on the chutzner, automatically, the home is included despite his protests. So this is the other side of the coin, that perhaps Rabbi Lezer is not based on generosity. It's based on a halachic consideration. Once you give away the chutzner, the home on its own is practically useless. And it's an inconvenient dwelling area, and therefore, when you give away the chutzner, the home just goes along with it. So even if he specifically says, I'm retaining the home, we say, no, the home gets included in the bittul of the chutzner, and they have full rights to transfer in and out of his home as well. Continues the Gemara. The same question will apply to the Rabbanon. Ula Rabbanon. My. Let's say he specifically says, I am actually doing bittul on my home as well. I'm giving away, I'm forfeiting usage rights to my home as well. My, what is halacha in this case? Tam of the Rabbanon is the reason why the Rabbanon maintain, generally speaking, the person retains usage rights to his home. Because they hold, which is basically bittul. The person is not so generous. Whatever he's compelled to give away, he gives away. If he's giving away the chutzner, fine, but he holds on to his home. That's only a presumption, but in this case, this person, he specifically stated that I'm giving away my home as well. So perhaps they would agree, in this case, that his home is included in the bittul. Or perhaps, the reason why the Chachamim maintain that a person retains ownership to his home, time of the Rabban, what is their reason? Mishum, the lo yavad inish, the misalik nafshi legamri, mibayis v'chatzar. It is not assumed, it is not customarily practiced that a person would be misalik nafshi, completely remove himself, eject himself completely from his home and his courtyard, and to present himself like a mere guest to the other residents. A person wouldn't so extremely change the situation from a homeowner to merely a guest. Therefore, we assume that although he gave something away, he only gave away usage rights to the chutzner. But the actual home, he retains usage rights to the home. Therefore, in our case, even though he says specifically, I'm giving away the home, lav kol kamin, he has no right to say that, meaning, batla data, his das, his intent, his attitude becomes nullified. We don't reckon with it. Rashi says, batla data, it's a kol adam. In view of the commonly held custom practice of your average person, ordinary people wouldn't give away their property to such extent. Therefore, it doesn't really carry weight halachically. It doesn't have legal standing. It's not something which is done. And therefore, the bittul only applies to the chutzner, but the home is retained by the owner. So these are two approaches, according to Rabbi Lezer and the Rabbanon, meaning it's a concept of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon based on generosity. Rabbi Lezer holds a person is generous, Rabbanon holds he's not. Therefore, if he specifically said, in Rabbi Lezer's case, I'm not generous, or in the Rabbanon, I am generous, we'll follow his word. Or is a halachic consideration here? The Rabbi Lezer holds, a home without a chutzner is practically useless. So once you give away the chutzner, the home goes along with it. So even if he specifically says, I am not giving away the home goes along. Conversely, according to Rabbanon, it's a halachic consideration. That we say, well, this type of arrangement doesn't work. It's not something which is acceptable. People don't do this, don't give away the entire property, the home with the chutzner. Therefore, even if he specifically says that the bittul shall apply to his home, it doesn't have any halachic standing. Amalei Sabai responded, indeed, that Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanon's svaris, their opinions are based on generosity. Meaning, according to Blezer, the presumption is a person's generous, gives away the home and the chutzner. Therefore, he specifically says, I'm not. We believe him. And we follow that. According to Rabbanan, generally a person limits his bittul, only gives away what he has to. And if he specifically states, I'm giving away the home as well, certainly we follow it. Amalei ben the Rabbanan, ben Rablezer, kivan the goli daite, goli. This person revealed his intention, meaning he articulated his intent very clearly. I'm giving away, I'm not giving away, goli. He has revealed, and we follow that to the T. Continues the Gemara, v'chein shamati mimenu. This is Rabbi Loi quoting Rabbi Lezer. I also heard from him the following halacha: sheyotzim bar kevalim b'Pesach. One can fulfill his mitzvah of murr by eating this bitter plant called arkevalim. My arkevalim, what is this? Amar shlokish atzvasa chazur charuziyasa. This is the plant, this reed, growing around, wrapping itself around the palm tree. As Rashi says, v'tam murr by. Apparently has a bitter taste. And according to Rabbi Loi's version of Rabbi Lezer, this can be used for the mitzvah of murr as well. Hadron loch oisen pas. Okay, time for a brief review of today's daf. We began with the story of Reish Galusa, who wanted to use his garden there, this large shady tree on Shabbos. So he instructed Rav Yehuda Kessler to apply some sort of modification to turn the place into a makom hukaf l'dira. And he went ahead and planted those poles to create an enclosure. And Rava came and he pulled them out. He held it's an incorrect approach. This doesn't make it mutter b'tiltel. The Gemara gives us 3 reasons why Rava's approach was the correct one. Number 1, because this enclosure was first hukaf and then the deer came along, and therefore it does not have a halachic standing as a residential enclosure. The Gemara said, just as mechitzas l'tznius, not considered to be considerable mechitzas, therefore in our case as well, they're just temporary mechitzas. And midrabanan, you cannot use them as mechitzas. Or mechitza l'nachas. Mechitza is merely done to store things that also cannot be used for carrying. So we see something that doesn't have dira value, residential value, does not constitute proper mechitzas in Rabbanon. And in our case as well, the mechitza is merely erected for a temporary, for a short time span, or she says a night and a day, and therefore they don't have the status of dira mechitzas, of residential mechitzas, they cannot use them. More discuss the maximum size of a karfif. According to Rabbi, it's a base kur. According to Hanani, 40 saw. And they source their shitas from the pasuk describing the backyard of Chizkiah Melech's palace, which was considered to be a residential area, despite the fact that it was very large in size. We learned that, according to Rabbi Lezer, a person is generous when it comes to his bittul. He gives away rights to his chutzner and to his home. And he has all the residents of the chutzner in mind. Ayin yafam avat. According to Rabbanan, a person is limited and restricted in his bittul. His intent is merely to give away the chutzner, not the home. And therefore he needs to go ahead and do a specific bittul to every single member of that chutzner. We don't assume that he had everybody in mind. The Gemara concluded, and indeed this is the basis of their respective opinions. Therefore, if he specifically stated otherwise, according to Rabbi Lezer, he specifically says, I'm holding on to my bias. According to Rabbanan, he specifically says, I'm giving away my bias as well. Certainly, it holds water and is legally binding. And we conclude with the third halacha that Rabbi Loi quoted from Rabbi Lezer. So in summary, we have 3 halachas. Number 1, that the maximum size of the karfif, which was not hukaf l'dira, it can be up to a base kur. The second halacha named Rabbi Lezer, that a person is mavata ba'ayin yafa. And the third one was that you can use the ar kevalim, this bitter plant, for the mitzvah of mar.